He says, Kabobi's face looks like a baboon's ass. That is the person the Bazungu want to make president of our beautiful country. They can go and F themselves. He goes on to say, why is he too ugly to be president? He makes Idi Amin look handsome. He says, Kabobi will never be president of Uganda. He should audition as court jester fool in Europe. He goes on to say, Kabobi is an idiot, thinking he can turn Uganda into slaves of whites in the name of Jesus Christ, our God. We Ugandans promise to wipe out Kabobi and his national unity platform. Ladies and gentlemen, those words are coming from the son of the president. President should be a moralist in chief. We should look up to him because his actions and his inaction, his words and his silence have a bearing on a country. If he's not going to rein in on his son, are we going to allow his son to come and, show us how ruthless he is? Over the weekend, there's something that happened. Something that didn't get enough of the Ugandan people's attention. The media itself didn't give it the attention I thought it deserved. It wasn't something beautiful. It was actually very dangerous. But regardless of its weight, the Ugandan people didn't get to know how dangerous this was. And this was Muhoozi Kainerugaba, the commander of Uganda's defense forces and the first son to the president of Uganda, Yoweri Museveni, announcing what he termed as the founding patriotic officers under the Patriotic League of Uganda, his political pressure group. And he went on to name people himself as a Patriotic Officer or PO 001, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, deputized by Andrew Mwenda, and then Michael Nwajira, Edwin Karujire, Daudi Kabanda, Baramba Rugahare, Michael Mawanda, Leaden Abar, the late Cedric Babu, Frank Gashumba, Henry Basariza, and Fadil Twaha. Now, the Ugandan people have gotten used to the extent at which Muhoozi Kainerugaba exposes himself to us, the Ugandan people, as incompetent, as a joker, and pretty much as someone that shouldn't be taken seriously. Now, there's a place for that. But it is really a huge mistake if we look at Muhoozi Kainerugaba as such. As incompetent as he is, he remains the commander of our defense forces. And we should always remind ourselves of the weight of this position. He abuses the office with what he's done in the past, with the inflammatory, profane language, demeaning, and really breaking civility and decorum that is expected of him. But regardless, we have to always remind ourselves of how dangerous he can be so that we do not get lost in the banter, jokes, and his incompetency that we end up forgetting that we have to push him out. I mean, out of his jokes, this is what he gave us. I think many of you, we should always remind ourselves of what he did. This was shortly after the abduction of Edemotwe. He said, learning Runyankore, the abduction of Bobi Wine's bodyguard. He went on to say, hey, I'm keeping him in my basement and I'm torturing him. This is coming from the command of the defense forces. There should be some sort of bearing from this man. He should try to present himself as civil, but maybe even beyond going civil, as a human being who cares about humanity, that respects the office, that is a role model to the Ugandan people, especially the young people, but he doesn't care. So if he doesn't care at all, us who look at his carelessness should ask ourselves a very important question. What are we doing? Let's not get lost into, in his banter and his incompetence and his carelessness and recklessness. I'll remind you of these words. Maybe you'll understand where I'm coming from. Listen to the words of Martin Luther King Jr. He said, those who love peace must learn to organize as effective as those who love war. Now, a careless, reckless, ridiculous man who loves war is organizing. The question now is, what are we doing? That was a dangerous move, despite of the fact that the media did not give him attention. This was pretty much swept under the rug. But it doesn't take away the weight of how dangerous it is. He's organized a pool of criminals, opportunists and charlatans, defenders of the indefensible, are all here. I'll go on and show you. I think I wrote this on my X platform, responding to what had been tweeted by Godwin Toko. He had pointed out the latest list is nothing short of a mirror image of the Museveni regime's deep-rooted favoritism and nepotism. And I went on to break it down. Out of 12 names, only one woman is included, and a mere one Muslim makes the cut. But what's even more troubling, just one person from outside Western and Central Uganda. This list is riddled with scandalous choices. One individual facing serious corruption charges, that is Mwenda. Another arrested by UPDF, who have openly branded him a serial fraudster, even showcasing forged passports allegedly linked to him as proof. That's Frank Gashumba. And the kicker, 3 out of the 12 are directly related by blood or marriage, meaning a single family has more representatives of that, or of the entire regions like Teso, Karamoja, Acholi, West Nile, Busoga, and Lango combined. This is the founding patriotic officers. That should sound an alarm in your mind. If they're willing to do this in broad daylight, publicize it for all of us to see, they're showing you of how unrestrained they are when it comes to doing what's immoral, illegal, and unethical. Now, look, some of their apologists might be like, hey, Mordecai, don't they have a right to organize politically? I mean, it is their prerogative. They can go on and organize. Don't they have a right to contest for positions of leadership? Absolutely, they do. I would die defending their right to contest for positions of leadership, to want to lead constituencies or even the country itself. But I have to understand these people. And what I'm doing here is decampaigning their political aspirations, their dreams to be our leaders, because they've shown us. For example, I've told you about Baram Barugahara. There was a cartoon that, trended years ago. All he does is being an obsequious lackey to Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Like, oh, I've never seen such beautiful susu. This is Muhoozi Kainerugaba exposing his private parts in public, only for Baram Barugahara to say, Oh, I've never seen such beautiful susu. Then he goes on to say, Supreme Leader, have you been told that your mustache looks like the Garden of Eden? Your teeth and the kind of are the kind every lady wants. Do you know that you are wiser than King Solomon? And then here they say, wow, your belt smells like the best meal ever. That is Baram Baragahad. All he does is simp around Muhoozi Kainerugaba. Is that the kind of leader you want? Absolutely not. That you go to Daudi Kabanda, who was, I think at one time I saw him making baseless, stupid accusations against me. You have seen him in some sort of exchange with his friend, Frank Gashumba. And then you have seen Frank Gashumba himself. I'll play you a video here of Frank Gashumba exposing. But before I actually go to Frank Gashumba, let's take a minute or two and try to understand the mind, the psychology behind a man who has organized this group, whom they look up to as a leader. Muhoozi Kainerugaba posted at one time, after we will kill Besigye, it will be turn of some members of parliament. Their necks have grown too fat from stealing money from us. We will hang them. That is their leader. Listen to the rhetoric, ladies and gentlemen. He goes on to say, yesterday I said we would hang Besigye on Heroes Day, June 9th. But thanks to some idiots in parliament, we have brought the day closer. We will hang him on May 9th. That's the commander of our defense forces, ladies and gentlemen. Do you understand how dangerous that is? Do you understand how sickening that is? We have young people who are looking at what Muhoozi does and posts on his social media platforms, and they think that is how the commander of the defense forces should talk. That vice signaling is some sort of a badge of honor. And I'm not virtue signaling here. I'm just stating facts, reality upon reality. That's what he posts. I cannot bring myself to a point of wishing death to Muhoozi Kainerugaba. I would even bring back the thought of hanging him. Impossible. Because I believe, despite of my disgust towards him, he deserves what we call a due process. There should be a process that should be followed before we come to a conclusion of handing a punishment to him. But he doesn't believe that. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we witness Muhoozi Kainerugaba and his ill-will-minded people organizing, the biggest question now is, what are we doing? Are we going to let them continue organizing and take over our country? Continue from the mayhem, the point of complete precipice Museveni has brought our country to? We have to hold ourselves to account, like I've always said here. Every day I ask myself, what is that I'm not doing right that has kept Museveni in power? Because I know it is my inaction, it is my failure that has kept Museveni in power. So if Museveni has been in power for 40 years and we've failed, are we going to allow him to allow Muhoozi Kainerugaba to start from where he is going to stop? Absolutely not. So I was showing you Muhoozi Kainerugaba and what he usually tweets. He's in my basement learning Runyankole. You are next. Remember in the other tweet I showed you before this one, he was referring to members of parliament as idiots. And then he goes on to say, I've tortured your bodyguard, your personal bodyguard, and you are next. They say an apple doesn't fall far from the tree. There's video evidence of Museveni bragging about torturing Bobby Wine. So If his son Muhoozi Kainerugaba says, "Oh, you are next," those are not just mere threats. It is really sad. Let's go and watch a few other clips or information I wanted to show you here, ladies and gentlemen. Look at what he posts on his X platform. He says, "Kabobi's face looks like a baboon's ass. That is the person the Bazungu want to make president of our beautiful country. They can go and F themselves." He goes on to say, why is he too ugly to be president? He makes Idi Amin look handsome. He says, Kabobi will never be president of Uganda. He should audition as court jester fool in Europe. He goes on to say, Kabobi is an idiot, thinking he can turn Uganda into slaves of whites in the name of Jesus Christ, our God. We Ugandans promise to wipe out Kabobi and his national unity platform. Ladies and gentlemen, those words are coming from the son of the president. President should be a moralist in chief. We should look up to him because his actions and his inaction, his words and his silence have a bearing on a country. If he's not going to rein in on his son, are we going to allow his son to come and, show us how ruthless he is? The biggest question now is, what are we doing? And I know we are just from a complete sham of an election. It is very difficult to talk hope because so many people are tuned out and they are demotivated. The mood is mundane and apathetic. But I believe in situations like this, some seeds can be planted and they will grow in ways we cannot explain. Unfathomable. So if you have the same belief, we've got some work to do. We cannot treat that as normal. The people of ill will are organizing. The question now is, what are we doing? People of goodwill. That's the most important question. Let us get to work and keep going. If we don't, there will be no one to blame but ourselves. If Muhoozi becomes president, surrounded by minions, obsequious foot soldiers, lackeys, lapdogs, and simps. No. We've got to do something. And it is time for us to do something. That's it for now. My name is Mordecai Murisa. Let me know what you think. Bye-bye for now.
Did you enjoy what you just watched?
I'm sure they did.
I'm going to guess that you did. How about you consider subscribing to Mordecai Marissa Live YouTube channel? Thank you.